Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. I think if we can take our seats. That's much better than I could do right now. Thank y'all all for coming out this afternoon. We're privileged and honored here today to have our senator. Hey, Melissa. All right, great. Thank y'all for coming out again. We're so fortunate today to have Senator DeMint join us. I think it was just a week ago that our friends on the other side of the political spectrum had the congressman from the 6th district here in town. And I think it's just a great study and juxtaposition between a politician who believes for any problem, government has an answer, and even when there's not a problem, the government will find an answer, find a way to intervene. We've just been talking about electronic medical records all morning. But on the other side of the aisle, and what I'd like to say is the right side of the aisle, we have just a wonderful servant here who said that get government out of the way, let business work, let people work, and Senator DeMint, we appreciate you. We appreciate your conservative fiscal voice. Thank you for what you've done. We hope you'll consider doing it a little while longer. Not to put you on the spot here, but thank you very much. Thank you for coming down.
We can lower this thing down. What I like to hear is what I heard when I walked in the door, is we got your back. You're among friends. So this is great to be with folks who really know what we're talking about. And Washington right now is probably not a pleasant place to work. There's such a difference in opinions about where we should go as a country. To me, coming from a small community in South Carolina, having a small business, it's pretty obvious to me what makes a community work. And it's really the people, their families, and churches, businesses, volunteer organizations. What's happened here at Sumter is not something that happened at the federal level. When you get these the economic development successes of Continental Tire and some other companies that are moving here, it's just for a long time. And I know I've been coming to Sumter 10 years off and on as a congressman, as a senator. It's taken a long time to get this going. But what makes America work is the people and the freedom to start businesses, to do the things that we want to do. And you know, I had a chance to talk at CPAC, which is the nation's largest gathering of conservatives, and I tried to help them see what the real differences were. Throw out the political labels for a minute. Is you got people in Washington who forget that America is a bottom-up country, where millions of people are making their own decisions about what they want to do and what they value. And the Constitution was put in place to keep it that way, to keep power from concentrating in Washington. But for several decades, you've seen people ignore that, and more education, more health care, more transportation, more energy, everything's kind of moving to Washington. And the problem is it doesn't work. It's too expensive. And we've created so much debt as a nation that we're on the verge of going over a cliff. And I honestly feel this year could be our last chance to turn things around. I know a lot of politicians are crying wolf when there's no wolf, and we're always talking about a crisis. But I just don't see how we could go the direction we're going for 4 more years and expect to be the America that we know and love on the other end of that. And it's not just the presidency, it's the Senate is where the real problem is. Because we've got a good group of Republicans in the House, but they're in a no-win situation. They can't cut spending because if they try, the Democrats in the Senate will force the government shutdown and blame it on the Republicans. And what we need is a few more conservatives in the Senate to not only have the majority, but to give the next president the right legislation, the right budgets, the right spending bills, and I think we can do that. So the good news for us as Republicans is that what we believe and is limited government and free people, those things work. They've proven to work. And other countries, Canada, and some countries in Europe are starting to move back that way, away from centralized power. And they're starting to get some success. You know, Canada's almost eliminated their deficits. They're being the example because they did not allow themselves to go over the cliff. But as Republicans, this is our chance locally, the state level, and at the federal level to turn things around. And what I tell folks back home who feel like they've lost control of Washington is to remind them we've got a lot of control at the state level of what we do, and we need to get our state to continue to do what it's doing, to protect our right to work status. Has got companies moving here. Believe me, you wouldn't have Continental if we didn't have a right to work environment. To keep a low tax rate in our state, to continue to develop our technical college system as well as our education system. We can do these things. We can control immigration at the state level. We can get the fraud out of our voting just with the voter IDs that have been proposed here. But more and more, these states that are doing the wrong thing are coming to Washington, seeing how can they unionize South Carolina? How can they raise the cost of energy in South Carolina? How can they raise the taxes in South Carolina so they can level the playing field? What we have to do, again, electing people here locally to go to the state level, keep property taxes down as much as we can locally so businesses will move here and people will move their homes here. Most of what makes this community, this state, this country great starts right at home at the local level. What I want to try to do in Washington, what I've been trying to do, is to keep the federal government from ruining all that by devaluing our dollar, taking us over a financial cliff. The debt that we've got now is just completely irresponsible, and this president just proposed a budget that the Congressional Budget Office says will double our debt. And as I just told some businesses over at the chamber, there is not that much money in the world to borrow. And so we're headed for a meltdown unless we can turn things around. But the good news is we've got a good conservative majority in the House. We're only 3 or 4 away in the Senate from having a majority. And I think whoever our nominee is as president, I think we can win this election if we go out with the right message to Americans. The challenge we have is we've only got about half of Americans who seem to really understand that we need less government, not more, and those are the ones we have to unite. I mean, whether they're independents, libertarians, conservatives, we need to unite them under the Republican umbrella, and I think we can do that. But the good news is what you do is what makes a difference. At the local level, organizing the party, it's what got me elected to the Senate, is dozens and dozens of small Republican groups. That's what gets good people in Columbia. So don't ever get discouraged because you're watching 24-hour-a-day news on Fox. You would think you need to give up on our country. Our country's still working. It's just somewhat oppressed by what's going on in Washington. But I think from the candidates I'm working with around the country, and any of you want to help, SenateConservatives.com. It's a website I created to raise money for conservative Senate candidates. We raised over $9 million last cycle and directed it towards Marco Rubio and Rand Paul and Pat Toomey, Mike Lee in Utah, Ron Johnson in Wisconsin. 5 of our candidates won. The average contribution in that site is $45. So we're not one of those super PAC that takes a lot of money. It's just average Americans who send checks for $10 and say, I'll send more when I get my next paycheck. But we've already identified 4 great candidates. I'll just mention them to you just so you know. I mean, Nebraska is a seat that Republicans can win. Ben Nelson's retiring. Don Stenberg's our candidate up there, and he's got a great shot of winning. In Wisconsin, Mark Newman is running for the Senate. He was in the House back in the 90s. One of those guys you want because he came to balance the budget. 4 years later, they had a balanced budget, and he went home. That's what he came for. And Josh Mandel in Ohio, a bright young guy, 2 tours in Iraq. And we've got a good shot of taking out Sherrod Brown, who's the most liberal member of the United States Senate. And then we've got and Ted Cruz in Texas, who's running to take a Republican's place, Kay Hutchison, who's retiring. But we've got a good shot and we'll probably get 3 or 4 more that we support. But I feel good about where we are. So I just wanted to come see you today and tell you to keep fighting. That's what I'm going to keep doing. And hopefully we can turn the corner in Washington and pull our country away from a cliff. But I'd love to have your comments or questions while I'm here. Yes, sir.
Which of those 4 would be your top choice in terms of likelihood of getting them elected and having them make the biggest difference?
That's hard to say because they're all good. I think Ted Cruz, a young guy in Texas, he's a constitutional conservative. He'll put people to sleep talking about the Constitution, kind of like Mike Lee. But he's serious. I think he's going to fight. But it's hard to discount Mark Newman, who is he was a legendary conservative. I came when he left. I came to the House in '98. So all four of them, we bring them to Washington. They fill out questionnaires. We have interviews with them. We talk about the need to stand against our own party sometimes, because that's often where the trouble begins, because we still have too many in the Republican Party in the Senate who think their job is to take home the bacon. And, you know, that might sound good if you want the bacon, but the fact is the country's in trouble, and we need to be about the business of America in Washington. Yes, sir.
Just one question. A lot of the hosts on the radio shows talk about the establishment, Republican establishment, is not really as conservative as they would paint themselves to be, whereas a lot of the ones that are in the House right now are truly conservative.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're Republicans, and they work good with conservatives or Democrats when they can find them.
Right.
But is there really very much of a divide between the establishment people up there in the party?
Well, there is, and some of my own party would just as soon I go home, because really fighting spending. If some of our senior Republicans in the Senate are not going to cut spending. I mean, you see the transportation bill that's going to go through. All you have to do is read about that and realize they're adding billions of dollars to our debt. And the payroll tax thing we just cut or just extended. I mean, we're going to add $100 billion to our debt. That was the only way we could get it through the Senate, because no one was willing to pay for it. Yeah, and you know, the establishment, I use that term a lot, but that's not just the party. It's the media. It's the lobbyist. It's kind of the old status quo of let's just keep the money coming. And so the idea of actually cutting the budget, balancing the budget, cutting programs, you know, even a few Republicans don't want to do that. The problem is mostly on the Democrat side, because if we get the majority, I'm convinced that we can move towards a balanced budget, because all 47 Republican senators voted for a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. Yes?
Can you tell us which Republicans in South Carolina that we need to get rid of?
Now, you know, I'm not real smart, but I'm not stupid enough to do that.
I might slip up on you blind.
But I will tell you this. The congressional delegation of Republicans are the best in the House. I can tell you that to a person, they are sharp. The new ones that just came in, I'm so proud of them. They are already leading in a lot of ways in the House. And they've stirred some things up. And because even Mitch McConnell in the Senate refers to them as being to the right of Genghis Khan. And so I like that. So we've got a great delegation on the Republican side. And I don't think we need to worry about replacing any of our Republicans at the federal level. I think what we need, hopefully, is just to continue to encourage and challenge Republicans here at the state level to do the things that create a better business environment, lower taxes, lower regulations, better tort system, and continue to do all we can to create an education system that trains the best workforce in the country. But our state's moving in the right direction. We're protecting our right to work status. I mean, you don't get companies like Continental and Boeing unless you're doing some of the right things. So I feel good about our state, but we're not there yet. We're still getting beaten by some of our neighboring states. But I think our Republicans at the state level are moving us in the right direction. Yes, sir.
What is this story about the Boeing situation? I know there was a suit,
Yeah.
and then they kind of stepped out, and then the NLRB moved
Well, they were able to extract or extort an agreement out of Boeing to expand production in Washington State for another plane, and they dropped the suit. But that's the kind of intimidation we're seeing from this administration. Wherever you've got a right-to-work state or a non-union shop like Gibson is in Nashville, where they basically raid them and say they're using the wrong kind of wood, they're a little out of control. So, but we need to protect our status as a good place to do business. And you see what a difference it makes here in Sumter. Yes?
I was terribly disappointed that our side did not explain why this tax holiday was so destructive to the Social Security system. $40 a week or $40 a pay cycle is not an awful lot of money, but it cuts an awful lot of dollars out of the Social Security Trust Fund. Before I sit down, I'm asking a question from Ms. Fleming over here. She wants to know what your opinion of the outcome of the health care, Obamacare, at the Supreme Court level that's coming up this summer and fall.
Well, let me just mention the payroll tax thing. I mean, it's a good example of kind of buying votes. And I argued against it when they first did it. If you recall, in order to get the current tax rates extended, during the lame duck Congress about a year and a half ago, Republicans agreed to accept this payroll tax cut. But payroll taxes, as you mentioned, it's not like income tax. It's a contribution to our pension plan, our called Social Security. And that trust fund is essentially broke already. It's an underfunded pension plan. And so all we're doing is making that program less able to pay benefits in the future. So I didn't vote for it the first time, and that's when we needed to make the argument on principle that the same one the Democrats made a few years ago when we were saying, let's take 2% from the payroll tax and actually save it in personal accounts for people so that some money, real money, would be there when they retire. They said that was risky to save it. But now they want to spend it, and that's not risky. So I think we could have made a principal argument, but we didn't. Just on the Supreme Court, I literally have no idea. I mean, we're pretty sure on what the recent appointments that Obama has put in. They've promoted the health care before it became law. So it's going to come down to one swing vote on the court. And I really don't know. But, it's going to be very disturbing if they say it's constitutional for the federal government to say we have to buy something. Because it's not just health care. It would really open the door wide for the federal government to tell us what kind of food we think that's ridiculous, but 10 years ago we would have said it was crazy to think the federal government would ever say that we not only have to buy health insurance, we have to buy a particular kind of health insurance that maybe covers things we don't agree with. Yes, sir.
First of all, I like your comment about Genghis Khan, because that's how I usually describe myself. I'm about as liberal as Genghis Khan. I have a question, and maybe I don't understand all the political minefields that are out there, but every time they try to scare people, especially elderly, and they start talking about cutting the entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, those are the only two they talk about. But those really aren't entitlements in the same class as other things that should be cut because people paid into Social Security. They paid into Medicare all these years.
Right.
No one ever throws out, wait a minute, let's talk about some of the other ones out there, the Medicaid and all the other freebies that are out there that the majority of people probably wouldn't mind seeing cut.
Well, I know I've talked about it because we've increased our, there's about 75 welfare-related programs. We thought we reformed welfare in the 90s. That was one program. Since then, we've tripled the amount of money we spend on welfare. So, and in good times, it's not just during recession. The last few years, we've expanded the number of people on food stamps and other welfare dramatically, to the point where 1 in 5 Americans now are on that. And so you add Social Security and Medicare and veterans and those who work for government, you've got over half of people now getting their income directly or indirectly from the federal government. But like you said, Social Security and Medicare is something people have paid for all their life. And I proposed we could save about $2.5 trillion over the next 10 years if we return welfare spending to 2008 levels and then let it grow with inflation. $2.5 trillion. But, you know, I was excoriated by papers in South Carolina for balancing on the backs of the poor. But there's enough fraud and enough abuse within those systems that people who are misusing them, that we could save that money and help the people we need to help. And they also need to be redesigned to actually help people get off of the programs rather than trapping them in a program that takes away their dignity and their whole motivation to work. Because our welfare programs have not helped the poor. We have created more poverty in America because those programs are designed to keep people on them rather than help them get off. So I am certainly for a safety net, but what we've done is we've created more of a trap for people. And so, yeah, there's plenty of money there, and I think that's where we need to begin to work. We need to be careful about cutting our military because defense is the primary reason for the federal government. But we need to look at things, a lot of, for instance, education. The federal government provides less than 10% of funding for public education. But the expense of the administration of federal programs probably more than outweighs that. If South Carolina did not have to comply with a lot of the regulation, we would probably be better off without the money and be able to do our own thing. The same with Medicaid. Block granting back to a couple of states as a test, they can save 10, 15, 20% and provide better health care if they don't have to be managed at the federal level. So the cuts are there, but the problem is the Democrats cannot cut spending. Now, folks kind of laugh when I say that, but their whole platform now has moved towards promising more from government, more benefits from government, and they thrive on government dependency because they've learned if people are dependent on government, they are a dependable vote. And that includes some of us who are conservative, as you find, and a lot of folks in this room may have found that. It's hard to be really conservative once you are dependent on Social Security and Medicare when the programs you've paid into, then suddenly you're afraid they're going to cut your income and your health care. So dependency is not a healthy thing for us to be free. But the money's there to cut. We can do it, but we need a new Senate and a new president to begin moving back in the right direction.
Illegal Mexicans that came in have paid Social Security. That is
Well, the question was about immigration and paying into Social Security, and the different statistics will give you different reads. You know, some folks say that Social Security would be even broker if it wasn't for illegals paying into it. Other folks would say generally they're not paying into those systems. I don't know the facts, but we should enforce our laws and control our borders. And until we do, I don't think we were going to have a sovereign country. So we need to control our borders and enforce our laws. Anything else? Yes.
Just this morning, I had a doctor's appointment. And of course, me and my age put on medic, we have to use that. Well, they had new forms for me to fill out that required government on this new Obamacare. And so it takes their time, takes my time, and probably going to end up, it's costing me an increase in Medicare premium, you know. And they'll, I don't know where it's going to end,
Yeah. Yeah, well, you're going to have this new, what we call Obamacare is going to put a lot more people on Medicaid. A lot more people are going to be on Medicare, and every year we don't pay doctors enough to see Medicare and Medicaid patients, which is not fair because it's an insurance program you paid into, and the way they're saving money on it is just not paying doctors. And so that's not a good situation for a doctor not to want to see you because your insurance doesn't pay enough to cover their cost. And I'm afraid we're making that worse, and we need to fix that. But one of the things that's been suggested, and it wouldn't apply to folks who are already retired, is to have a system set up where people who like the insurance they have when they retire, is they can keep it and Medicare can help them pay for it. That would save the federal government money, and it would allow more people to keep their own plans. That's something that obviously we don't start with people who are over 55 because folks are kind of planning on what they've got. But I know I'd sure like to have the option when I retire to keep some kind of private insurance that doctors will take. So a lot of problems to solve, but the good news is hopefully November we're going to change in the White House and change the Senate and start solving some of these problems. But what I've told my colleagues, I don't want to be in a Republican majority again and do what we did last time, is just keep spending money and not doing the reforms we promised. You know, we need to fix Social Security and Medicare, and we need to reform our tax code and make sure that our defense is the best in the world. Okay, let me go over here for.
Senator, in the event that we're able to capture the Senate in November but not the White House, will there be a way to prevent Obama from continuing to put new czars in, give more regulatory authority to some of the cabinets, to more executive orders, to still pursue his agenda even though he doesn't have the House and the Senate?
Yeah. Well, we will have a lot more leverage if we have the Senate and the House. We can control some things with. Oh, okay. The question is if President Obama wins a second term, but we get a majority in the Senate, will we be able to slow his progress on regulations and the other things he's doing? And I think we will. I think it will be very difficult to repeal Obamacare, but if we were committed, we could control a lot of the funding for the implementation of that. But it's going to be hard if we know he's got another 4 years. And if we try to cut funding, he'll shut the government down, blame it on us. It'll be a mess. It will help to have a majority in the Senate, but if the president's in the White House, he's already shown he'll go around us. He'll make appointments when we're on recess. And basically ignore the Constitution. So it'll be tough, but I think we'll be in a better position if we have the majority to at least slow down the damage. My concern is that if 4 more years, even if we slowed the damage, that we're going to have some kind of major meltdown of our debt and monetary system if we don't have a plan to balance our budget. Okay. Okay. Yes, sir.
Just as an example of what's going on in the last 4 years, we look at the cash for clunkers and how much money was just spent on hiring a whole lot of federal employees for that. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this past weekend the director went out, put another layer on the Department of Agriculture, making inspectors for school lunches to make sure they have the proper nutrition in brown bags that were off from home.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything to that?
I don't know. I hadn't read that yet, but we've had a couple of cases reported in the news of kids not being allowed to eat their lunch. Again, it's things you'd laugh at a few years ago, but now I'm starting to see that it can really happen. These folks who are in power really think that they can make better decisions for us than we can, but we need to make some changes.
Just for curiosity, what happened to all these people that were employed by the government for the cash for clunkers? Were they fired and draw unemployment, or were they branched out at different places?
I don't know where they went, but I don't want those same guys running health care. Yes.
I heard a fairly pessimistic report the other day that even if we did get a Republican president, that Obamacare is already so ingrained that we can't truly repeal all of it.
Yeah. Well, No, I mean, they're spending money to set this thing up. There's no question about it, and states are setting the thing up. I still think the only way to save us from national disaster is to repeal the thing completely. It's not the kind of bill that can be fixed because it's based on central command and control systems. And, you know, the Catholic Church found that out after they advocated for the bill. Labor unions advocated for the bill. They're first in line for the waivers. Most of the thousands of waivers for labor unions who don't want to live under the bill they helped to pass. So a president could give states waivers, and hopefully our state would be first in line to just waive this thing, try to deal with it in a different way at the state level. But hopefully we will be able to repeal it and give states or give states waivers very quickly so it won't be implemented. But yes, sir.
Can the House and Senate do anything when the president goes around the Constitution?
Well, it'll be easier when we have the majority because we can bring in these people and have hearings in the Senate. Right now they're having hearings in the House on National Labor Relations Board, what they did to Boeing. But it's hard to carry through in the Senate. So we need the majority back to be able to tighten the reins on that. And we're filing, you know, there are people filing suits about his recess appointments. That's going to take a while, a year or so to come. But we're just like this health care thing. That was started a couple of years ago, the lawsuits, and now it's finally getting to the Supreme Court. So we're going to try to go through the right channels here, but the president seems determined to go around the Constitution, around the American people. So he's not just ignoring Congress, he's ignoring the American people. Yes?
On behalf of the folks who are in this bind, the Navy folks, the Third Army folks, and who knows, the Air Force, they are being forced out. They have a very large group off of the carrier. 300 people are being forced to leave the Navy. They have 8 years in. That means you don't get anything. And it is right. Unfortunately, I know a chief, but he's going to get 16. They're forcing them out to cut the military. And if that's not your gig, ask somebody why they're doing that on one hand, and for the Coast Guard and the Navy particularly, and they're taking people enlisted.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of us working to try to turn back these cuts. Again, I think if there's one thing the federal government should do and do well is our defense. And the Navy's pretty important in our ships to deploying and staging our troops all around the world. So we're trying to stop that, but it's inevitable if we allow them to go through with the cuts, is they're going to draw down our forces in all of the branches. And so it gets back to the November election. So if Republicans win this year, think country's going to go one way. I think our defenses will go one way. If we lose, I think they're going to continue to pay for government programs we don't have to have by cutting the military. Yes, sir.
As I look around, I don't see very many people here that would be asked for proof of age at a bar. And we're obviously...
I'm offended.
I didn't think you were ready. Based on that is, and I don't know if you can speak for the RNC, but is there any move afoot to make the younger people understand that they are going to bear the brunt of this economic chaos and catastrophe that's coming?
Yeah. Well, there is, as you know, most young people start out liberal. It's kind of the liberal fly. If they see a problem, let the government fix it, because they don't yet know how the private sector and individuals and volunteers can actually solve problems better. But I see more this year who are disillusioned by what they thought was hope and change. At least I go to more meetings now where young people there, more young Republican groups are coming to Washington to visit us. And so I'm optimistic that more of the young will get involved with this. Clearly a number of them were fooled. They're too smart to be fooled another time. So I'm hopeful we can convince a lot of young folks. But we also need to realize they want something different. You see a lot of young people who support Ron Paul. Ron Paul he really limited government, constitutional government. He doesn't want the government to do much. And I don't agree with Ron on some things, as the way he looks at military or some other, but the ideas of constitutional limited government, the focus on our monetary system, there's some things there that I've encouraged our presidential candidates to listen to, because we can't get to 51% as Republicans unless we attract a lot of libertarians, which include a lot of young people. Oh, yes, sir.
I just want to piggyback on the defense thing. When you look at whatever it is, $487 billion they're going to cut, and then depending on the super committee, it could go up to $1 trillion. And I'm not saying DOD doesn't need to be cut a little bit because we're brought back, but it seems like DOD is the only thing that's cut, as far as I see, because there's nothing else out there that isn't being cut. And I also see a national defense strategy that looks like it's no longer based on what the threat is out there, it's based on the budget. So the budget's driving a national defense strategy, which I don't.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a lot of concern, and the biggest concern is it seems easier for the administration to cut military than to cut anything else. Whether it's Planned Parenthood or public broadcast. I mean, they won't cut. They can't find anything they will cut, what leads me to believe I've just seen it's very difficult to compromise with the other side. Because just like with the payroll tax, every time you compromise, everyone was saying, no, this is a great example of bipartisanship. It really is a good example of bipartisanship. We added $100 billion to our national debt last week with that deal. That's in 1 year. It'll be more than that over a period of time. And it was celebrated as bipartisanship. But I'm concerned, we have to spend a lot on our defenses for a lot of the new technology and intelligence and things, missile defense systems, and to upgrade our nuclear arsenal. I mean, again, a lot of folks don't know about, but Russia's. And the ones we're not upgrading to tactical nuclear like Russia has done. And so we've been outflanked. And when America's weak, the whole world is destabilized. I think that's what we see happening, is when they don't think we'll act, they start misbehaving. And that's what I've seen around the world, is when the perception of American weakness creates a lot of mischief. Yes, sir.
I'm retired Army. My wife is a Navy chief. That's her over there. Your job in Washington is the first and foremost national defense. Next is making it easy for business to work. And I agree with what you just said there. And there's a lot of concern about some of the things they're doing to protect the forces and reducing the effectiveness. I jumped to the Major General with Shaw about a year ago, and I have a number of parents asking me about tying their kids' hands behind their back in Afghanistan and Iraq with the rules of engagement. That if we're not going to send our kids, our young people, our soldiers and sailors and airmen and Air Force people, Navy people, over in the combat zone to win, we ought not to go.
Yeah. No,
His own slideshow video program showed out of the 76 sorties in ground support, they were reporting only 1,700 of them were metal on the ground in support of the ground operations.
Yeah. The rules of engagement we could talk about a long time, but I think that's that has been an obstacle. Well, I guess we can't get into that. We've been.
I'm gonna put on my old press secretary hat and say if we've got one or two more questions tops for the senator, so he can.
That's good. Yeah, and be sure to buy something before you leave here.
Yeah, that's even more important.
Okay. Anything else? I know I need to let y'all go. Y'all.
Young lady over there.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
On the E-Verify bill that's up there now, what's gonna happen with that? I know Bonner won't bring it up.
I don't know. It's probably not going to go through like we want it until after the election, but it is being used now. It's just not required the way we wanted it to in legislation. But I think more states are going to insist that they have some form of E-Verify that's constantly updated, that's as easy as a debit card to find out who's legal or not. But hopefully we'll get that after the election. Okay, well, okay, and one more. Right, okay.
Constitutional for Harry Reid to not even bring a bill before the Senate when the House does it? Is that even constitutional?
Yeah, well, he doesn't have to as majority leader, but we have some tools we're not using. I mean, we can basically create a petition to bring a bill on the floor. It's somewhat unprecedented, but these are unprecedented times, and I've done it before. I've brought a bill up that they didn't want to bring up just by using the rules. So we need to do more of that, but hopefully we'll have the majority and can bring up our own bills after November. But in the meantime, we'll just try to minimize the damage. And also in the meantime, you guys keep doing what you're doing. Get behind your local Republican candidates. If you got a primary, work hard for whoever you believe in. Try to be as nice as you can to the other guy. Primaries are miserable. And just let's keep praying for our country, our troops, and just keep fighting for freedom. Thanks for getting my back.